I'd like to start with a question for our audience. How many of you think you can be the CEOs of your company? I can't see you, but I will speculate that only about 20% of you raised your hands. This is a question I ask to my audiences around the world, and typically only 20% of the women will raise their hand. It's a very important question. I did not ask if you want to be the CEO, but can you? And what is it that you can do? What is it that you are capable of doing? And the answer is the extraordinary. I would go so far as saying, you have the power to change the world. And I don't say this in a cliche type of way. You have the power to change the world. And the most common way you give up this power is by thinking you don't have any. And it's important for you to lean into this power. I first came upon this concept of how we have the power to change the world. And the premise being, in order to lean into this power, you had to come up with a big and exciting goal. I was incredibly skeptical about this concept when I first came about it. I was asked a question that changed my life and changed my work. And the question was, if anything were possible, what would you love to achieve? Being a skeptical scientist, I did not buy into the concept. And I set out to disprove this idea that anything were possible. So I set two impossible goals for myself. The first was to run the marathon, knowing that I was incapable of running even more than a kilometer. The second goal I set for myself, this was 25 years ago, mind you, 25 years ago, I set the goal to open the offices for my chemicals firm in Switzerland. I felt I was too young, there was a glass ceiling, and more importantly, I was convinced that my boss didn't like me. What was incredible, within 4 months, I achieved both those goals. It begged the question, what else had I not imagined? And this became a turning point in my life and work. This became my life's work and passion. And for the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of working with leaders around the world doing extraordinary things. And I'd like to share with you some of the insights that have been tested and tried, not only with these leaders who've done extraordinary things, but also with myself. So the first insight starts with thinking big. You need to think big. Just as they said, if anything were possible, what would you love to achieve? And what happens too often is that we tend to be on an automatic mode, on an autopilot. And our future is very much an extension of our past. It's vitally important that we take a step back and reflect on, if anything were possible, what is it that we would love to achieve? And if you are setting up your own goal, it better be a BHAG. A BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Given that you're making it up, let it be the most exciting and the most compelling. There is a 90-10 principle that 10% is what life gives you and 90% is what you are making of it. You have a choice. You can be in the driving seat or you can be on the autopilot. I can tell you for 30 years, I lived my life on autopilot. And for the last 25 years, being in the driving seat is far more compelling. And yes, there will be failures, but that's part of the course. So remember, think big. You go only as far as you imagine. So that's something important to keep in mind. The second key insight is around once you have your big, hairy, audacious goal and you've thought big, what starts happening is the inner voice, the inner critic kicks in, and it starts telling you all the reasons why it can't be achieved. Very key, get out of your own way. You come up with a big, hairy, audacious goal, and you start hearing, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I too young? Am I too old? How will I manage? It's too political. There are 1,000 reasons. It's like a duck. It's like a duck that's quacking on your shoulder. You need to shut the duck up. I remember again from my own personal experience 20 years ago, on the back of a 5-year maternity leave, I wanted to come back to work. I wanted to come back to work and I had these ambitions to do great things. However, in my mid-30s with 2 small children, not having worked for 5 years, I was starting from scratch. It had been a very difficult few years for me. As I was looking forward, I felt I was too old and too tired. The more I told myself I was too old and too tired, I started feeling too old and too tired. I woke up one day and I basically shut the duck up. I needed to come up with a more compelling narrative. I was the storyteller, and why was I telling myself such self-defeating stories? So I needed to really reframe myself and say, I have what it takes. I have done these things before. And so there was something around really getting out of your own way. What I find is that the biggest barrier to my success and to the success of other people is not out there, it's you. So get out of your own way. So first is come up, think big, a big, hairy, audacious goal, get out of your own way. And the third key insight is create a strong support matrix around you. Who are the 5 people closest to you at home and at work who support you, who nourish you, who challenge you and believe in you? Vitally important. Who are these 5 people? Make sure you are also one of the 5 that you are your biggest supporter. Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend or your best client. I remember when I came up with the idea of Advance, to this day, 10 years ago, I had this idea to start a revolution in Switzerland and to create something that would be groundbreaking and a game changer. And as I shared this with several people, I heard 100 reasons why it would not work. I'd love to have them here today, because look where we are. We came from 10 companies who founded it to over 100 members today. So vitally important to have this support matrix. Who are the people closest to you, who believe in you? And for me, what was vitally important for the success of Advance were the strong group of committee of angels we had. And I feel I stand on the shoulder of giants. And to summarize, it is all possible. It is possible. And the 3 key insights. So first for me, you have the power to change the world. And remember, the most common way you give up your power is by thinking you don't have any. 3 things to keep in mind. Think big. Think big. Second is get out of your own way. And the third is make sure you have a strong support matrix which challenges and nourishes you and also supports you tremendously. And we live in extraordinary times. These are unprecedented times. And I believe we are facing a huge change socially, culturally, organizationally. And we've heard from very inspirational speakers throughout the day today about all the different changes that will be required. It's a very complex topic. History is unfolding, and we have a choice. We have a choice to make history or to be shaped by it. I'm not waiting. What about you? Thank you.